right, biologists, this is your introduction to something called biogeochemical cycles. That's a scary word. It just means nutrient cycles. And basically we are looking at how materials, nutrients, pass through ecosystems, okay? Now, up to now, we have talked about energy. We talked about how energy flows through an ecosystem. So what we need to do is kind of compare energy and nutrients, because they both pass through, are passed from one organism to another in so on ecosystems, but it's somewhat different for each. To begin with, they're just fundamentally different things. Energy is not something you can hold in your hand. It is the ability to do something, to do work. It's light energy. It's heat. We can feel the heat, but again, you can't really hold it in your hand. It's mechanical energy, the running that you might do or whatever. It's a whole lot of things, but it is not, excuse me, it is not a physical thing that you can hold in your hand, okay? Whereas nutrients absolutely are. They are things you can hold. In fact, you are absolutely made of them. This stuff is made of nutrient. In fact, nutrients are basically molecules that are useful to living things. So, energy and nutrients are different not only in what they are, but also how they move through an ecosystem. Now, if you will recall, energy flows through an ecosystem one way. It goes from the sun, through the producers, through the consumers, and it's used by all those organisms, but ultimately it reaches the end of its usability because there's just not enough left anymore. It reaches the end of its usability to living things, and whatever energy is remaining is dispersed back to the universe as heat, okay? And that's a form of energy that is not terribly useful for supporting an ecosystem, okay? So energy flows through one way, from the sun through an ecosystem to the point where it is not very usable anymore, okay? Nutrients are different. They don't just have a one-way flow. They are used over and over. They are recycled in an ecosystem, used over and over again. Very much like Lego building blocks. You get a box of Legos and you build stuff, and then you break it apart, and you build stuff again, and you break it apart, and you build stuff again, and you break it apart, and you build stuff again. That is exactly how nutrients work. Nutrients go from these small building blocks to very complex structures, and then back again to building blocks so they can be used again, okay? The same nutrients, the same Legos, the same molecules that have been on the earth since the earth formed, and they're the ones that are still here today. They've been used over and over and over again. We keep using them to build new living creatures. Those living creatures die. Those nutrients, those molecules are recycled. So it is very true to say the oxygen that you may breathe today may have been part of this dinosaur millions of years ago. The carbon that is in your very flesh today could have been in a dinosaur or some other creature millions of years ago. These molecules have been used over and over and over again. Now, nutrient cycles. These are the cycles that we can understand that show us how some of these very important molecules, some of these very important nutrients move in this path through the ecosystem, okay? So all nutrient cycles, we need to consider where we're getting our Legos from, how they're being used, and then how we get our Legos back to where they started. So all nutrient cycles, all nutrients, living things need a place to get our building blocks, our molecules from, and where we get those basic molecules from is from the abiotic parts of the environment, meaning like the air, the soil, the water, okay? Then we use those molecules to build crazy, complicated critters, living things, you, me, the trees, the grass, the fish, the birds, whatever, the biotic components of the environment. And then we've got to put the Legos back where we got them so we can use them again. So we need to return the Legos, the molecules, back to the environment so they can be used again. Okay? Now, please do remember, nutrients are really just molecules, okay? It's just that they are molecules that happen to be useful, really useful, important to living things, okay? There are the molecules that we're talking about that we're getting from the environment, the building block Legos, if you will. These tend to be small, simple, just like the individual Legos, okay? Water, that's what, well, this molecule here is water. This is 2 oxygens and a carbon, that's CO2, and of course this is oxygen gas. These are all examples of molecules that would typically be in the environment around us in large amounts, relatively speaking. Carbon dioxide, water, oxygen, these are small atoms, small molecules made of just a few atoms. They are simple in their structure, very much like individual Lego building blocks. They are also called inorganic molecules. Any molecules that are small and simple are typically called inorganic. So the molecules that are in this air and the water around us and so on are inorganic. They are small, they are simple. They are these small building blocks, okay? The molecules in living things tend to be different in that they are large molecules. Look at this. This is huge, okay? Comparatively speaking. And very complex. If you might recognize what this actually is a model of DNA. So what you need to understand is the molecules that are in the environment, these small, tiny, inorganic, simple molecules, are being taken in by living things, and we're building towers with them. We're building big, complicated molecules with them, like that one, like DNA. That's all that's happening in a nutrient cycle. These small, tiny little molecules, inorganic molecules in the environment, in the air, in the water, are being taken in by living things, and living things are using them to build Lego towers, huge, complicated molecules like DNA, like proteins and things like that, okay? So basically, another way of saying that is that nutrient cycles take inorganic compounds and they build organic compounds with them, which are big and complex. But remember what we always have to do if we want to be able to build another tower later on, another DNA molecule later on, at some point this is going to have to get returned back to its inorganic form, back to the Lego box, so we can build stuff again. Okay, so nutrient cycles are simply how we get from these small little building block molecules to something large and complex like a DNA molecule, and then back again. All right, that's all a nutrient cycle is. Okay, now biogeochemical cycles. It sounds scary. It's not. It's just another term for a nutrient cycle. Okay, but if you see it, all it means is the bio part here is referring to life. The geo part here is referring to the earth or the environment, non-life. Chemical, of course, means chemicals, molecules, and cycle means cycles. So biogeochemical cycle is just talking about these nutrient cycles where the nutrients spend some time in the earth, being simple, sometimes in living, some of their time in living things, being part of a very complex molecule or molecules, and then back to the earth again, return to their simple form. Okay, there are 4 important biogeochemical cycles we are going to look at. The water cycle, you already know, carbon cycle, and the water, well, the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, and the phosphorus cycle. There are other biogeochemical cycles, but these are the ones that are most important. And of these, probably we need to spend the most time understanding the middle two. So that's it for this podcast. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.